Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, whose story am I living? As if somehow without realizing it, you've been following a script written by someone else, parents, teachers, friends, society itself. And though everything on the surface seems fine, something deep inside whispers, this isn't me. You wake up each morning, you put on your usual smile, you do what's expected, you meet your obligations, you interact as if nothing's wrong. But when the noise quiets down, when you're finally alone, there's a question that creeps in hauntingly familiar. Who am I? Really? Carl Jung didn't see this discomfort as random. He believed it was a signal, a symptom of a deeper truth that most people spend their lives avoiding. Because here's the reality. Most people never meet their true self. They live inside social roles. They become what others expect. They adapt. They perform. They conform. And the most tragic part, they think that's all there is. They die having lived someone else's life, never having touched their soul, never having discovered who they truly were underneath all the masks. So now comes the most important question of all. Is this happening to you? You call it yourself. But what if your personality, your desires, your beliefs, what if much of it was shaped by forces outside of you? What if your identity was built to make you acceptable? Not authentic. From the moment we are born, we are trained to fit in. We are taught subtly, constantly to modify ourselves, to earn love, to avoid judgment, to belong. We learn to silence parts of ourselves, to hide our curiosity, to suppress our emotions, to perform instead of express. And in doing so, we create a mask. Jung called it the persona, a social disguise, a role we play to navigate the world. And it's useful, yes. Without the persona, we couldn't relate, work, or function socially. But the danger lies in forgetting that it's a mask, because the more we wear it, the more it becomes all we know. We forget what lies beneath. Eventually, the persona doesn't just protect us, it replaces us. Have you ever smiled when you wanted to cry, agreed when you wanted to scream, pretended to be okay when inside you were falling apart? Then you've met the persona, and maybe you've started to become it. You're no longer acting, you're surviving. You're becoming what others need from you, not what your soul is asking you to be. And here lies the danger. The persona can win you acceptance, but it cannot bring you fulfillment. It might secure admiration, but it cannot give you peace. Because no matter how polished your mask becomes, it will never be enough to satisfy the deep ache of a soul left unseen. Over time, this disconnection becomes unbearable. You feel it as a quiet emptiness, a restlessness, a sense that something essential is missing, but you can't quite put your finger on what. This is the cost of living as a character instead of a person, of being a projection, not a presence. And the more tightly you cling to this mask, the further you drift from the only thing that can truly fulfill you, your essence. But if the persona is not who you are, then who are you to answer this? We must explore what lies beneath. The parts of you that were silenced, shamed, rejected, the hidden you. Carl Jung called this the shadow. The other side of the coin, the parts of your psyche pushed into darkness not because they were evil, but because they were deemed unacceptable. And this is where the journey truly begins. Because until you turn toward your shadow, until you meet what's been hidden, you will never truly meet yourself. But be warned, what you find in the shadow may not be easy to face. Are you ready? Then let's go deeper. If this resonates with something inside you, if it feels like I'm describing a quiet truth you've always known, click subscribe. Join this space where we question, reflect, and reclaim what's real. Now let's return to the shadow. If the persona is the face you show to gain approval, then the shadow is everything you hide to avoid rejection. But here's the paradox. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It grows. It waits. It hides in your unconscious, quietly shaping your emotions, your reactions, your choices, often without you even realizing it. Jung described the shadow as the part of the psyche made up of everything you have repressed, unacceptable desires. Suppressed anger, vulnerabilities you were told to hide, even the parts of you that are beautiful but were once labeled as too much. Maybe as a child you were too curious and got scolded, so you learned to stay quiet. Maybe you felt anger but were told it was wrong, so you began to swallow your frustration. Maybe you cried easily, but society called that weakness, so you learned to numb your feelings. And all of it didn't vanish. It simply sank into the shadow waiting to surface. And it will surface. That unexpected rage, that quiet resentment, that jealousy you pretend you don't feel. These are not flaws. They're signals. Messages from the parts of yourself you've never met. And here's what's even more important. Much of what's hidden in your shadow isn't bad. It's simply misunderstood. Gifts denied. Truths buried. Light covered in shame. The journey to authenticity doesn't mean killing the shadow. It means integrating it, making peace with it, listening to what it has to say. This is the path Jung called individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole, of moving beyond the mask, of reclaiming your lost self. And it's not easy. It demands courage. It demands honesty. It demands that you stop running from who you are and start remembering. But it is the only path to real freedom. Are you ready to take the next step? Then continue with me in the next part. In the last part, we revealed that your shadow, though often feared, is not your enemy. It is the hidden key to wholeness. But here's the deeper truth. If you don't face what's buried in the dark, it will eventually take control. Have you ever reacted with intense emotion, anger, jealousy, defensiveness, and afterwards asked yourself, why did I respond like that? That wasn't just a bad mood. That was your shadow speaking. When we refuse to consciously deal with our shadow, it doesn't just disappear. It seeps into our actions in subtle and distorted ways. It sabotages our relationships. It chips away at our self-worth. It influences our decisions from behind the scenes, all while we believe we're acting rationally. But here's what no one tells you. Your shadow is not here to destroy you. In fact, it's the very source of your authenticity, creativity, and inner power. The parts of you that were once silenced, your wild imagination, your emotional intensity, your intuitive voice, your unfiltered truth, these live in the shadow waiting not to be destroyed but reintegrated. You cannot become whole while denying what makes you complete. And you cannot discover your true self until you stop running from your inner darkness and start learning how to bring it into the light. But how do you do that? How do you face a part of yourself that has been buried for years, possibly for your entire life? How do you invite the shadow into your awareness without being overwhelmed by it? The answer lies in a powerful concept at the center of Jungian psychology. The self, not the social self, not the mask, but the true self, the essence of who you really are, beyond all roles, expectations, and fears. If the persona is the mask you wear, and the shadow is what you hide, then the self is what exists beneath and beyond both. It is the wholeness of your psyche, the integration of all that you are, the light, the dark, the known, the hidden. It is not a fragment. It is not a role. It is the totality of your being. Carl Jung believed that the highest goal of life was not to be successful in the way society defines it, not to be liked, not to fit in, but to become whole, to discover the self and live in alignment with it. He called this process individuation, the sacred journey of returning to who you truly are. But let's be clear, the self will not reveal itself to those who are unwilling to see. It will not appear through wishful thinking. It doesn't arrive in a flash of insight one quiet morning. It demands effort. It demands confrontation. It demands you meet the parts of yourself you've been conditioned to avoid. And perhaps that's why so few people ever reach it, because this journey asks for more than just desire. It requires courage to look at the masks you've worn, to acknowledge that maybe many of the choices you've made weren't truly yours, that maybe you've lived more for acceptance than for authenticity. And that realization, it terrifies most. It's the fear of losing your constructed identity, the fear of admitting that parts of your life were built on denial, the fear of facing the raw, unfiltered truth of your inner world. And so people stay in the persona. They keep performing. They ignore the whispers of the shadow until it roars, and they live their entire lives disconnected, fragmented, longing. But when finally you stop running, when you start integrating the shadow, questioning the persona, something incredible begins to happen. You feel a freedom you didn't know was possible. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer crave validation. You begin to speak your truth, not to offend, but because silence feels like betrayal. You begin to live as yourself, not a version designed to please others. And here's the beauty of it. As you get closer to yourself, life starts to make sense. The anxiety that once felt random, it now has a root. You see the patterns behind your suffering. You recognize why certain relationships always break the same way. You understand why certain emotions have haunted you for years. Because all along your soul was speaking, but you were too busy fitting in to listen. But there's something else. A truth many overlook on this journey. You cannot find your true self in isolation. Why? Because there are deeper layers shaping your identity, forces you didn't choose but that still operate within you every day. They live in the realm of the unconscious. Jung believed that to truly find the self, it's not enough to examine your conscious thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors. You must go deeper, into the hidden mind, into the dream world, into the symbolic language of the unconscious psyche. It's there beneath the surface where the real blueprint of your identity is found. But what exactly lives in this unconscious realm, beyond your shadow, beyond repressed memories or buried emotions? There's something even more fundamental in your archetypes. Jung discovered that we are not born as blank slates. We carry within us ancient universal patterns shared by all of humanity across time and culture. He called this the collective unconscious. From this realm arise the archetypes' primordial images and energies that influence how we think, feel, dream, and behave. Have you ever felt drawn to a myth or story and not known why, felt a deep resonance with a symbol, a character, a role? That's the archetype at work. They show up everywhere in fairy tales, religion films, and most importantly, in your dreams and decisions. The hero, the wise one, the rebel, the caregiver. Each archetype carries a symbolic energy that shapes your inner world. The hero seeks transformation through struggle. The wise one represents truth and introspection. The rebel challenges systems and breaks norms. The caregiver devotes themselves to the protection of others. And here's the most fascinating part. You don't choose your archetypes. They choose you. They live in your psyche, shaping your worldview, your desires, even your fears. The danger when you become too identified with just one, when you confuse an archetypal role with your full identity. But that's where we're headed next. Because to truly become whole, you must learn to recognize these forces, not to destroy them, but to integrate them with consciousness and balance. This is the next stage of individuation. So if you're ready to keep peeling back the layers to understand the hidden patterns that have shaped your life, continue with me in the next part, because the journey into the self has only just begun. In the last part, we explored the hidden world of archetypes, universal forces within your unconscious that influence your life, whether you realize it or not. But what happens when you identify too much with just one archetype and ignore the rest? Let's say you see yourself only as the hero. You pride yourself on being strong, resilient, always ready to overcome challenges. But over time, this identity starts to trap you. You feel pressure to never show weakness, to always be brave, even when you're exhausted. You suppress your vulnerability, your need for help, your softness. Or maybe you live solely as the caregiver. You dedicate yourself to others, supporting, nurturing, always giving. But somewhere along the way, you forget yourself. Your needs fall to the bottom of the list. You say yes when you want to say no. And slowly you begin to feel invisible. The truth is, no archetype is wrong, but no single archetype is enough. Finding your true self means becoming aware of the roles that dominate your life and bringing back the ones you've forgotten or rejected. So how do you recognize which archetypes are active in you? Look closely. They show up in your dreams, in your emotional triggers, in the patterns you keep repeating, sometimes without understanding why. They influence the decisions you make, the relationships you choose, the stories you tell yourself. And if you ignore them, you risk cutting off vital parts of your identity. This is why so many people feel lost. They don't realize they are being silently governed by unconscious forces, archetypes that they never chose, but that still shape their path. And here's the most important truth. If you do not become aware of your archetypes, they will control you. They will dictate your behaviors. They will fuel your insecurities. They will sabotage your relationships. They will run your life from the shadows. But when you recognize them, integrate them, and balance them, you reclaim authorship of your own story. This is what separates those who awaken from those who spend their lives repeating patterns they don't understand. But what happens when someone never looks within? What happens when a person refuses to confront their shadow, ignores their archetypes, and clings tightly to the persona? Carl Jung was crystal clear about the consequences of non-individuation. Avoiding the journey inward does not protect you. It condemns you. It leads to a fragmented existence filled with quiet suffering, anxiety with no clear source, frustration that never resolves, a hollow feeling, even in moments that should bring joy. People often think that following the rules, adapting, fitting in, doing what's expected will give them peace. But that peace is often shallow, a calm surface covering deep unrest. Sooner or later, the cracks begin to show. Maybe it appears as an emotional breakdown with no apparent cause. Maybe it's a creeping dissatisfaction even when life seems perfect on paper. Or perhaps it's the emergence of physical symptoms, psychosomatic illnesses, when the body starts expressing what the soul cannot say. Because the body always knows. And when you stray too far from your true nature, it will alert you. Non-individuation also reveals itself in destructive patterns. Have you ever seen someone who always ends up in toxic relationships, who repeatedly sabotages their own success, who lives in a cycle of drama, dissatisfaction, or self-betrayal? That's not bad luck. That's the unconscious trying to break through. When you suppress what's within you, it doesn't disappear. It fights for expression, sometimes through chaos. Another symptom, the sense that you're merely existing. Waking up, going through the motions, following routines, but without passion, without clarity, without direction. You feel like a ghost in your own life, like you're drifting, not driving. And here's the haunting truth. Millions of people live like this. They never question whether the life they lead is one they chose or one they inherited. They follow family scripts, cultural expectations, social norms, all without ever asking, does this actually make me happy? And then comes the most dangerous feeling of all, resentment. When you ignore who you really are, you start to feel angry, but you don't know where that anger is coming from. So you blame the world, you blame your family, the system. Or worse, you turn that anger inward. It becomes self-hate, depression, a slow disconnection from your own soul. But here's the good news, there is a way out. It begins with a single courageous act, facing the truth, questioning your illusions, letting go of the roles that no longer serve you, choosing the path of individuation. This path isn't comfortable. It's not easy. It requires effort, honesty, and a willingness to feel what you've long avoided. But what lies on the other side is priceless, real freedom. So what does it mean practically to be yourself? What does it feel like to live without masks, to stop repressing your truth, to no longer fear the judgment of others? That's what we'll explore now. Finding your true self is not a final destination. It's not a switch that flips one day giving you all the answers. It's a lifelong process, a journey of inner excavation, of discovery, deconstruction, and reconstruction. A path that only a few are brave enough to walk. Because most people choose safety. They cling to the persona because it keeps them liked. They avoid the shadow because it makes them uncomfortable. They deny the archetypes because they want to believe they're fully in control. But this false safety comes at a terrible cost. A life lived without authenticity, without depth, without meaning. Jung showed us that true freedom doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from becoming who you really are. And that means embracing your wholeness, your light, and your darkness. It means seeing your flaws not as failures, but as fragments of your truth. It means taking back the pen and rewriting your own story. To do that, you must abandon the comfort of illusion. You must look at yourself with new eyes, and you must accept that the version of yourself you've always been may not be the real you. And that's okay, because what you discover can be far more powerful, far more alive, and far more real than anything you've been pretending to be. So I ask you now, are you ready? Are you willing to question the stories you've been told about yourself, to face the parts of you that have been hidden, to finally live from your core, not your conditioning? If this video made you reflect even just a little, leave a comment below. Share what spoke to you, because the first step toward freedom is awareness. And here in this space, we don't settle for the surface. We dig deep. We seek truth. We remember who we are. If you're ready to continue this journey, make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next will take you even further inward.